Today is the first Sunday of Lent, and the church always holds up for us on the first Sunday of Lent the temptations of Jesus. I just want to reflect with you a little bit about temptation. Temptation is common to all of us. Young, middle school, high school, young adult, college, married, single, divorced, retired, on the verge of the end of our life. Male, female, rich, poor, priest, all of us. This is a very common experience. There's not one person that's never been tempted. And as I was reflecting on this and preparing for this homily, and I started to think about that Jesus was tempted. And that really consoled me. It just really consoled me that Jesus was tempted. You see, sometimes you and I can think that we've already done wrong if we're tempted. And one of the things that can happen to us is we can start to have an unnecessary shame with temptation. Like, for some reason, I shouldn't be tempted in this way. Like, what does that mean about myself if I'm even tempted in this way? And then all of a sudden, I start to feel this unnecessary shame. But the Bible says that Jesus was tempted in every respect, yet without sinning. He was tempted in every way you could be tempted. And he did not have any unnecessary shame because of that, which is so healing for you and me. I was just talking with some people last night about this, and the person very vulnerably shared, like, yeah, sometimes as soon as I'm tempted, I already feel like I have to go to confession. But there's a distinction that we make between temptation, the suggestion of the devil trying to lure us to evil, and giving in to temptation. There's a difference between being tempted and giving in to temptation, consenting to temptation, agreeing and doing it. Jesus was tempted in every way. And yet, he didn't give in to the temptation. He defeated it. He conquered it. And so maybe if you found yourself being tempted, one of the first things that can help us overcome temptation is actually just to name it. I'm being tempted. And actually you can get really specific, and that's helpful too. I'm being tempted to, and then fill in the blank. I'm being tempted to compare myself with another person on social media. I'm being tempted to hate someone. I'm being, whatever, doesn't matter. Because sometimes you and I can feel bound already that I'm being tempted. And I feel shame for being tempted. There's no shame. It's not like we're walking towards it. The Bible actually said that the devil approached Jesus. The devil approached Jesus. Jesus didn't approach the devil. So Jesus is the new Adam. Adam and Eve were tempted, and they gave in to temptation. Jesus is the new Adam, and he conquers it from within. And he is tempted in 3 ways. And I just want to reflect with you about kind of the essence of what the devil is doing in temptation. Because in some ways, perhaps, all temptation is like this. He questions our identity, and he questions our highest value. He asks, who are you? And what is life about? So I could ask that to you too in a non-tempting way. Those are important questions that you and I can reflect upon. Who are you, and what is life principally about? So the devil comes to Jesus and he says, if you are the Son of God, ... If you are the Son of God, trying to plant a seed of doubt into his identity. Just before the temptations, Jesus was baptized in the Jordan, and he hears the voice, "You are my beloved Son. With you I am well pleased." You are my beloved Son. That was not the first time Jesus likely heard that from the Father, but the Father wanted to manifest that to the world. Jesus knew who he was. Sometimes when you and I are tempted, we can forget who we are. We can forget who we are. And sometimes when it's really intense, we can even kind of have an existential crisis. Like, who am I? Who am I? And that's where we just claim the voice of God. I am God's child. Jesus just claimed it. I am the beloved Son. You are profoundly loved by God. That doesn't change in the midst of temptation. Like, as soon as you and I are tempted, it doesn't mean God stops loving us. We get to claim it even deeper. I am loved. And then, what is life principally about? Another way you could ask this is, what is your highest good? Or what or who is your God? These are very important questions. In other words, you could say, what is ordering my life? What is guiding my life fundamentally? Not to pepper you with questions, but another way you could ask this is, if everything else was taken away from you, and you only got to have one thing remain, what would you choose? You could think about this question for the rest of your life. If everything else was stripped from you, and you only got to choose one thing to keep, what would you choose? One way you can get at this question a little bit, and the Bible is really good about this, is you can take two things and can compare them and say, if I only got to have one of these two, which would I choose? So for example, you could say, if I got to be wealthy but have really poor health, or would I rather have really good health and be materially poor? Which would you choose? Riches with bad health, or really good health with not a lot of money? If you ever ask this to like sixth graders, by the way, I love middle schoolers, but if you ever ask this to sixth graders, do you know what they'll say to you? Father Ben, why can't we just have both? And I'm like, yes, I agree, but that's not the point of this question. I want to see what you value more. What do you value more? Health or riches? What do you value more? And honestly, just as an aside, if you've ever had really, really difficult health problems, you probably already know what you'd choose. Because if you're lying in bed but you got money in the bank, kind of doesn't matter. So, for us, we could ask, is health our highest good? All these things that I'm going to say right now are good things. But we could just ask, is health our highest good? Maybe you've even said something like this: as long as I have my health. As long as I have my health. Or maybe, if I can say this with a lot of love, maybe sports is your highest good. So if it ever was between playing sports or going to Mass and worshiping God, like if you couldn't do both, you'd either have to miss your game and go to church, or you'd have to go miss church and go to your game. Which would you choose? Which would you choose? Or maybe kids is your highest good. As long as my kids are happy, or my spouse, or maybe my career is my highest good. Like, that is what dictates everything. Or money, or pleasure, or power. So at the beginning of Jesus' ministry, he hasn't yet gone out yet. He is tempted in every way, but the Bible holds up for us three main ways that he's tempted. And this first way that he's tempted is actually really profound. It's kind of twofold. One is Jesus. No one's even going to know. I mean, we're in a desert. You're all alone. No one's going to find out. Just use your power only for you. Just use your power only for you. It's going to be okay. See, power and authority is for the service of others. But you and I, we can be tempted, whether we're parents, priests, teachers, managers at your job, owners of a business, older siblings, whatever responsibility you and I have, you and I can be tempted to use our power for our benefit only. And it goes even deeper, this first temptation of turning stones into bread. Because Jesus reveals to us what the temptation is principally about, which is to only care about material things. He says, men and women do not live by bread alone. So you and I, especially in the modern world, we can think that the things of this world, the goods of this world, the pleasures of this world are all I need to be happy. Like, all I need is those things. And those things are okay, typically. But is that all we need? Is that even the highest thing that we need? Perhaps you've actually experienced this at some point in your life where you had all those things and you were still so empty. What would it mean for you and me if we had all material objects, nice house, nice car, 3 meals a day, job, health insurance, dental insurance, all these things, and we lacked purpose, meaning, love, and relationship with God? Lent invites us to look and take stock of our heart and say, if that's the case, God, I want to start hearing your word. Jesus is then tempted to test God. Just prove it, God, that you love me. Prove it. That for me really hit me this morning, even thinking about it again. Because if I'm honest, not only have I been tempted to do that to God, I have given into that temptation. And then when he apparently didn't prove it, then I get angry and bitter and want to just check out. And God's like, wait a second, Father Ben, come back. That's not who I'm like. It's not what I'm like. That's not who I am. And that's not who you are in my eyes either. And then lastly, he's tempted to give it all away. On the verge of his public ministry, the devil is like, you want to reach the whole world? Why go through all the labor, the blood, the sweat, the tears? Why go through the disappointment, the frustration, the difficulty? It's going to be so hard. You can have it all now. You can have it all right now. All you have to do is just worship me. All you have to do is lose your soul. Jesus would later say in his public ministry, if a man or woman would come after me, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever save his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his life? Or what shall a man give in return for his life? Another translation of the Bible says it this way: for what doth it profit a man if he gain the whole world and suffer the loss of his own soul? What would it profit you and me if we were the best athletes? If we always won every single game, went to every single tournament, never missed practice, won 7 Super Bowls, won 5 Stanley Cups, won all these awards, and we lost our soul? What would it profit me if I became the most profitable CEO of a company, got to do any trip I wanted, had everything the world could offer me at my disposal, and lost my soul? What would it profit you to gain the whole world and lose your soul? You can lose your soul. You see, Jesus, when he compared that, he said to Satan, get away. Get away. I'll give everything. Get away. So, devil, if I'm hearing you right, I can have it all right now, but I just lose my soul. How about this? I'll die rather than give that up. I'll die. What is the highest good of your life? Is it merely created, or is it the uncreated God? So today, you and I, we get to reflect about deep questions that help guide us. If we're being tempted, there's no shame in that. Rather, I get to know who I am, whose I am, who I belong to, and what life is principally about. I belong to God, and life is about God.